Alright guys, I am making a bit of venison stew today. You can see I'm browning the meat off in batches. That's kind of the first step. I'll probably piece all this together on the computer for you instead of doing a playlist. But this is just some venison with a little bacon grease, a little dusting of white flour just to thicken or make basically almost like a roux at the bottom there, you can see. And I'm doing it in batches so that I can actually get a brown on the meat. So that was one batch. I probably could have crammed that in there, but we'll get this done and removed out, and we'll start sauteing down some onions and putting it together, and I'll catch up with you and, like I said, string all this together for you. All right, so added a little bit of fat to the skillet, and now we're going to go down with basically a mirepoix, which is equal amounts. I may have to... Sorry about the camera working this for a second, guys. All right, so had to use the hand there. So equal amounts of carrots, celery, and onion, as the French call a mirepoix, and we'll saute that down. We'll add a little salt, and we'll do some pepper after I stop filming this segment right here, because I can't run the pepper grinder and the camera. I'm alone today. The wife is out hanging out with her sister. Good day for me to make some venison stew. So all I'll do is I'll get this cooked down, and I'll be actually dicing up a little bit of garlic to go in there. But I like to, when I'm making the base for a stew or a soup with a mirepoix, I always add garlic. A mirepoix does not have garlic. It's, again, celery, carrots, and onions, but I like garlic in my base. But what I'll do is I'll chop my garlic up and I'll add it right at the end, because if you put it in here now while you're giving it this kind of heavy saute, this garlic has so much sugar in it, it'll basically burn on you and get bitter. So you add your garlic at the end. And sponsor of this episode of Cooking with Jack in the Kitchen, Empty Knives. And this is my one of my LEs of the latest LE04, limited edition 04 from Empty Knives. Man, this is beautiful. I'm a pretty big fan of shun knives. You can see them up there, the hammered Damascus stuff. Man, Patrick has exceeded what the Japanese do with this. This is like a lightsaber in your hand, guys. Anyway, I'll be back with you in just a bit. So you can see we have the mirepoix starting to cook down nice. Here's the proper implement. You saw me use tongs. I had those out to take the meat out when I wanted to get it back out after I browned it. But when you're cooking with cast iron, really the best thing is to use a good metal spatula. And this one you can get on Amazon. I'll put a link in the video notes. But I learned about it from Awesome Paul Wheaton over at permisandrichsoil.com. And I'll put a link to his little article about cast iron. Probably the best cast iron article on the internet on restoring old cast iron. This isn't old, but it applies equally to new cast iron to a degree. You read the article, you understand why I'm saying that. But when you're cooking with cast iron and you constantly have this metal moving across it, it helps form that patina that you're looking for. It's a little harder on new cast iron. But the point of this is it's time for the garlic to go down. I got about 4 cloves of garlic there. And that might seem like a lot, but this is going to cook for an awful long time, and I like garlic. And when you cook garlic nice and low and slow in a stew, instead of getting what you think of as a strong flavor, what you actually get is a sweetness and kind of an herbalness. And that pretty much does it for there. So now what I need to do is make up a bit of liquid so that basically the stew will be the meat braising for a while before we add carrots and potatoes and bigger pieces of celery for our final stew product. So I'll get that going and come back to you. I can't show you every step because I got one hand to cook with and one hand to film with, but we'll do the best we can for you. So, got everything back in, and I'll kind of talk about the seasonings that I use. And you can see I've got it just enough to just cover the meat, because what I want to do is braise this, and I'm bringing it up to a simmer. You can do this 100% on the stove top. What I'm going to do is set it to about 270 degrees and stick it in the oven for a couple hours and occasionally test it. And what I'm going to be looking for is this meat to get about as, close to as tender as I want it before I add my carrots and my potatoes and my celery. They're only going to take 45 minutes-ish to cook down into the stew. And if I put them in now and it's in there for several hours, the potatoes will be mushed, the carrots will be paste, the celery will be okay, but it really will have lost its flavor. That's why we use celery, carrot, and onion to add flavor to the broth, so we're not trying to ask for it out of the bigger chunks that are in the stew. We'll keep the potato mild in this, probably 1 potato for the whole thing. I try to keep my carbs down. But what goes into this after everything you've seen so far? So, not a lot. I try to keep things pretty simple, and I try not to use pre-mixed spice mixes in something like a stew. I want to control it. There's about 3 or 4 bay leaves in there. I love the flavor of bay. A little bit of rosemary. You said just keep my herbs, my dried herbs in jars. Rosemary and thyme go together in stew. And then something not a lot of people do, but I do a bit of paprika, probably about a teaspoon to a tablespoon in there. You can see it's just starting to simmer. Now here's the thing, I don't want it to just sit here boiling away. And if I put it on the stovetop right now and leave it on the stovetop, I'm going to have to pay attention to it instead of paying attention to football on Sunday on TV, which is what I feel like doing today, because I ain't watched a dadgone game this year yet. And so by putting this in the oven, it's going to be pretty much just set a timer and check on it. And we'll get the lid on it and we'll get her in the oven. And I'm not going to show you that because I think you know what it looks like to put something in the oven. But we'll get the Dutch oven in the oven, and when we're ready for the next step, we'll be back and get all this crap cleaned up. I like to clean as I go, makes your life easier, and we'll get back with you in a bit. Dang it, forgot one important thing. So I used about 3 cups of water, and it's not a recipe. I just knew if I didn't measure it, you guys would be asking me. And this ain't hot yet, so I can pick it up. It was just enough like that just to cover the meat and all of the base that's in there so far. And the other thing that I added was about 2 teaspoons of Better Than Bouillon beef paste. Usually I'll make a bone stock or something like that for making deer stew. I'm trying to clean the freezer out from last year because I'm fixing to go hunting in 2 weeks and put more deer meat in it. And I didn't have time to make a bone stock today. When I don't have time to make a stock, I always rely on this stuff. This is one of my go-tos. I use this with a chicken base, a beef base. I use a fish base for making fish soups and Thai curries and stuff like that. This is one of the most awesome products there is. Very similar to the base paste that they use at high-end restaurants. So just a little piece there that I left out on you. All right, so this has only been running about an hour and 15 minutes, but it's looking really nice, and it's actually tendering up a lot faster than I thought it would be. This is a pretty tough cut of meat that this came from. This is like mostly upper shoulder meat, a lot of sinews and silver sheen on it, but I did a pretty good job of trimming it up. And this is from about a 1.5-year-old doe, so this was a young deer. So, you know, again, I'm down to one hand here, but that's not, that's pretty damn tender. I think it's about time to get with adding the potatoes, carrots, and celery, and heck, it'll be done a lot earlier than I expected. That's damn good. I'll get a little bit of juice with it. So time to get the veg in there and get some thickening going on. I'll be back in just a bit. All right, so like I said, the meat tendered up really quick, so it probably needs about an hour with the veggies simmering in there at 275 in the oven. You say I got it just set on bake at 275. And whenever I'm doing something like this and I take it out and I'm cutting up vegetables to go in, I have it on the burner on low just to keep it nice and hot so you can see it simmering. The only thing I did other than adding some carrots and potatoes and celery, which was just as much as I thought it needed, I have no idea how much, I don't really do recipes, was, you know, the amount of moisture, the liquid that was in there was a little bit low at that point. So I decided to, instead of using water, to use beer to bring it up, and 1 bottle would do. I went out and I found this in my refrigerator. I'm not a Coors Light drinker or anything like drinker. You can see that bottle's been sitting out there a while. We call these the dregs of brumanity. When people come here and they bring beer that we don't drink and they leave it behind, we use it for cooking and things like that. What am I drinking? I'm not drinking this crap. This is what I've got going today, man. Real Ale Devil's Backbone. This is like a Belgian-style triple. This is the best Belgian-style ale, especially as a triple, that I've ever drank that was not actually made in Belgium. It's made here in Austin, Texas by Real Ale Brewing Company. Good stuff. If you're going to drink Belgian ale, make sure you drink it in the right glass. One simply does not drink a triple out of a bottle, nor does one drink one out of a pint glass. You want that nice bell shape to get all that aroma. Good stuff. I wouldn't want to put it in the stew because, 1, it's too good a beer for that, and 2, well, the intense flavor of this would just overpower the stew instead of just being there in the background. Anyway, we'll get her back in the oven. I got like one real ingredient left to do. I mean, there's always salt and pepper to taste at the end, but I'm going to do parsley in this, flat Italian chopped parsley, but I want to do that right at the end so that it doesn't cook down to nothing. And of course, always be tasting your stuff all along the way, making your little adjustments. And that's part of becoming a good cook, is learning how to make those adjustments on the fly when something's not going right or something's lacking or what have you. We'll catch up with you in a bit. All right, we are getting toward the end here. You can see it's looking beautiful. And what I want to do now is add my fresh herbs, which in this case amounts to nothing but parsley. And I want to thicken this beautiful juice into more of a gravy. So to accomplish that, I've made a slurry. And that's basically just a few teaspoons of flour and water until you can see how it's nice and it flows. There's no clumps. If you just throw flour in here, what's going to happen is it's going to start cooking. You're going to end up with a bunch of little, I guess what you'd end up with are kind of like crappy, lumpy dumplings. And you don't want that. So we're going to go ahead and just dump that in there. There might be a little residual. I may rinse that out and mix it up off camera when I have two hands and use the rest of it. But just that little bit of flour, you can see right away how it kind of changes the color of the juice, and it'll start thickening up now. And it's pretty much, you could eat it right now, but I'll let it cook a little bit longer and thicken a little bit more and everything soften a bit more. And I'll probably pick this up and scrape the last little bits off again when I have two hands free. But this will give you the idea of what we're doing. We're just going to basically wilt that parsley. And that's almost a whole bunch of flat Italian parsley. I like flat Italian for this better than the curly, but either one will work. And that gives it a nice, fresh herbalness. And you can see that this has thickened. If you look at that, even though it's not completely thickened yet, it's thickened a lot just from that little bit. So we'll pop it back in for about 15 minutes, and that'll be it. And we'll get it out and probably top it with some fresh green onions and let you know how it tastes. But I already know how it tastes. It tastes good. All right, so we're done. You can see that thickened up. Nice, kind of thick gravy from that little bit of flour. And again, we only used about, I think, 3 teaspoons, maybe 4 teaspoons of flour to make a slurry. Everything looks wonderful. You can see the... So that's why I like to add those herbs at the end. See how the parsley is still intact and nice and bright green? So that'll stay hot all day damn near in that cast iron. We'll throw the lid back on it. I already made up a bowl for myself. I'm waiting for the wife to get home. And so we got a bowl made up. I already put some pepper on it. Finishing it off here. This is Maldon salt, which is, if you look at this stuff, it's like flakes and it's crispy. And I don't use this when I'm cooking. I use this, you know, on food when I'm eating it. And then we got some thinly sliced green onion. At the end of the green onion, we're going to stick that in one of the aquatic beds out there and regrow it. And probably get 3 or 4 more onions out of it. But I'll add that green onion right there at the end, leave it nice and fresh. And let's give it a taste. Let's do it in stages. Let's try the juice first. And just try that. Oh man, I wish you could try it. Let's try a little bit of the deer meat. Again, this is a young doe that I shot last year with my little 357 rifle. That's like butter. Potato. Not many in there, so I kind of want to cut that, stretch out my potato so it lasts a while. Because that, with the onion and the parsley. Try a little carrot. Sweet, perfectly soft. Celery with some meat. Might as well have another piece of meat there. Not a lot of meat in this one. I only had about 1.5 pounds in that packet. Well, guys, I don't know what you're eating today. But that's not going to be my only bowl. That's not a huge pot for me. Usually when I make stew, I'm worried about overfilling the pot. You know, like, is there going to be enough room? Man, I think I'll wipe that down. I might have I don't know, by the time it's all over with, I might have enough for one bowl tomorrow for lunch, because I'm going to tear this up. I'm trying to hope that the wife will give us a try. She's never actually eaten deer meat that I've made before, and I know that she says she's tried it in the past, but 20 years, she hasn't given it a chance once when I've made it. I promise you, if I lied to her and told her that was beef, she would never know. That is one of the most fantastic pieces of meat. My God. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed today's Sunday Cooking with Jack. We'll catch up with you later.